my name's Debbie Reeder, and I'm here with Wendy Ranney.
Rainy.
Okay, and Jami is with the West Valley Outdoor Learning Center. And we're going to talk to Wendy about her experiences as a, um, well, not wildlife, sorry, forestry, and then also an environmental educator. But the thing that she's really passionate about right now is they own a lodge up in Alaska, and she's into photography, and she just got a first place picture posted in, or it's in the magazine, the Alaska magazine. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about that and introduce herself.
Well, hello. My name is Wendy Ranney, and my husband and I live in Cordova, Alaska. The population here is about 2,000, but it's a really interesting spot because you can't get here by a road. You have to either fly in or take a boat. So we are considered a remote community. We have two schools. You have an elementary school, and we have a junior, senior high school, and about 300 students. And we live right on the water on Prince William Sound. So in my window that I'm looking at beyond my computer right now, I'm looking at Prince William Sound, and there's all sorts of sea ducks, and we have the largest population of sea otters in the world in Prince William Sound, and we sometimes see orca whales go by, and it's just an amazing place to be.
So one of the things that I find really interesting, I met Wendy through my cousin that worked up in Alaska, and he was an accountant. And I don't know if this is how you met or not, but he traveled to different communities up there. I lived in Alaska for about 10 years, and I never ventured down to this area because you can't drive down there. And I think my family, we drove everywhere. But there's a lot of people in Alaska that have pilot's license. Do you do you have a pilot's license, or do you have tours come up that you take out?
I do not have a pilot's license, but my husband is our pilot for our lodge. We do have remote lodges that are satellites from our main property, and we put a chef and guides, and you can fly out to those lodges and stay there and fish. And so he's the pilot for those activities. We used to, before we owned the lodge, had an air taxi service, and I was the dispatcher for the air taxi. And that means the communities out in Prince William Sound get their mail from small planes, and so we would pick up the mail and take them to all the little communities. And my favorite time was Christmas, because we would take boxes of mandarin oranges out and dress up like Santa Claus to the villages, and that was one of my favorite times. But captain's licenses for boats and pilot's licenses are kind of like a driver's license in the lower 48. When our sons turned 16, they got a boat. They did not get a car. So it's a little different up here.
So Jami and I are going to go back and forth and ask questions. And this whole Zoom thing is so new to all of us that we don't usually get to talk to people in Alaska. I mean, we don't have them come in the classroom. If you go to visit the Outdoor Learning Center, you don't necessarily have a guest speaker just pop in somebody from Alaska that just got off the boat or anything. So this is kind of unique for us. So I think she probably has some questions too. I'm just going to go through the career stuff real quick. When I talked to Wendy earlier, she talked about the industry of hospitality, as well as, you know, it being an outdoor area. There's a lot of probably fishing jobs with fishing and touring. She talked about the skiing, the helicopter skiing, but the tourism up there is something that she talked about that I wasn't even thinking about at first when I asked her to come on here. So maybe she could talk about just some of the different jobs that are available in places like this.
Well, we usually start scouting for jobs after January 1st. We start scouting for folks to work for us. And we have, on this property alone, there's quite a variety. We look for everything from a master chef that comes in and cooks. We have a full service restaurant here on the property that feeds our clients. So we need servers, we need chefs, we need sous chefs. Then we have tours, and we do wildlife tours, photography tours. We have student groups come in, so we need guides, and we recommend that folks, when they apply for jobs with us as a guide, have a wilderness background, wilderness training, medicine, in wilderness medicine background, or a paramedic background, because what the goal for us with a tourist when they come in is to make them experience Alaska as safely as possible. And they don't need to know that they've just risked their life to do this. We have to make it seem smooth and seamless. And the folks that we employ are pretty highly trained, and we do some training on the property, but with the guides, the fishing guides and the adventure guides, the kayak guides, we do require that they come in with a wildlife medicine background or an EMT background, because we are very remote. We do have a hospital in the community, but it is a native owned hospital, and it's not set up for triage. So we don't have any kind of, we have an emergency room, but we're not really set up for any kind of trauma. You would be medevaced out of Cordova and sent to Anchorage, which is about a 20-minute medevac flight if something were to happen. So we try to have folks experience as much as they can, as safely as they can, and that takes a lot of working hands in the background.
I think it's interesting because we kind of look at it the same way. Granted, we're taking kids hiking in closer to an urban area, but you don't want your participants to feel nervous, and you want to be able to manage those risks, yet still allow them to have the risk. So you have it on a much larger scale than us here, but it's very similar, because if somebody gets hurt on your watch and you're not prepared for it, it definitely can kind of ruin your business. That's for sure.
One of our trips that we do that has become very popular is a kayak trip, where you do a small hike that's about 1/8 of a mile, and then you kayak in a lake at the face of a glacier around icebergs. And a lot of people come and they're like, oh, I've kayaked before. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. You haven't done this. You need to wear a full bodysuit protection, because you have minutes in that water if your kayak were to flip. And we have 2 kayak guides that take each group out, no matter how many folks there are, and one's on a paddleboard, and there's coordination with the Coast Guard, air rescue, and that's just one trip that we do. And so each one of our trips has to have a full catalog of safety parameters behind it, so that we can have folks experience this lifestyle and feel safe and do it safely.
Well, I feel like there's kids out there that, they always think they have to go into, like, sorry to pick on science. I love science, I'm a science person, but I want to, do something in the outdoors. And you don't have to be a strong scientist to be experienced in the wilderness. You can be very passionate and be outside. But if you are a rule follower and you like to check off all the boxes and spend time outside, and it's a cool job for somebody like that. So I love, Debbie, you connecting this for the career stuff. I don't think a lot of kids know it's an opportunity out there.
A lot of our guides come from biology background, wildlife background, forestry background, but we've also hired folks who have gone on and done degrees in something completely different, but vacationed here with their family and decided that they really wanted to do this as a summer job. And one of our best saltwater fishing guides came here at 12 years old and fished on our beach, and told us that he was going to come back and be a saltwater guide. And lo and behold, he was one of our best guides for about 7 years. And awesome. He had come here on vacation with his family. So there's quite a lot of opportunities. We get a lot of applicants. So we do a lot of research, which is why we start in January to find folks. And then it's kind of almost like a family, because we're so remote, and we're about 2 miles outside of town. So we're not even in the center of town. The folks that work here live here. So it's a full immersion into the lifestyle when you come here. And
I would imagine you have to be able to get along with people too.
Absolutely.
You're in the middle of nowhere with 12 people and one other staff person.
Yeah. It's a lot of chatting. It's a lot of talking. I don't know how many times in a season I say, oh my gosh, that is the biggest silver salmon I've ever seen, and I have to do it enthusiastically. But
I tell our staff all the time, I know you've taught the salmon lesson 40 times this year, but it's this kid's first time. So you gotta, So good actors sometimes too in this field.
Yep.
Sorry, Debbie, am I hijacking your talk there?
Oh, that's great. You know, when you talk about students experiencing something at 12 and then deciding I want to do this when I get older, and maybe it's not for their whole life, it's just something that they decide they want to do. That's why bringing all of this and having Jami talk to students at young age, because sometimes it sets that in there that that is something that they want to do, and it doesn't have to be a whole career goal. Maybe it's something that they want to do for a little while. And I think I learned that more by living in Alaska. When I lived up there, there were a lot of people that when they were younger, they did jobs that they weren't going to be doing for their entire life. It was, I'm young, I'm going to go out and experience this. And it was a little bit different mindset. But I think it's great for students to start thinking about what they want to do. And when I was out there catching halibut and big salmon and stuff, I probably thought I wanted to do that the rest of my life. But I don't know if I could put up with tours forever because they blame you for the weather if it's not nice when they picture.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're in charge of the weather. You're in charge of whether the fish bite or not. You're in charge of a lot of things. We do also work with different cultures. So we participate in the J1 visa program and bring 5 to 7 students from Europe in every year when it's not a COVID year. And they get to come and they live on the property and do the jobs. They do the wait staff in the cafe, and they are in charge of the fish house, and they come. And we've been running that program for 20 years, and we've had relatives through word of mouth that we've had cousins and distant cousins of people who were here 20 years ago on staff and come through. And we focus mainly on the Czech Republic and Poland. We've had folks come in from England. We've had folks come in from Russia. So there's always an influx of a different culture for us as well. So the folks that live and work here with us get to experience their culture, and we get to show them our culture. So there's a lot of exchange that happens between the staff here as well. It's a lot of fun.
Well, something else that Wendy talked about, I talked to her a little bit before we started recording, and there's college students that'll sometimes come up there for a week and get college credit. So maybe experience isn't totally what you think you might want to do, but looking into opportunities like this while you're in college will be very valuable for you. Sometimes you might think that you want to go live in rural Alaska and you go up there for a week and decide maybe that's not for me. And that's a lot easier doing it for a week than to pick up and move there. But it also might be something that you haven't thought a whole lot about. And maybe you're in culinary and want to see what it's like to cook in a place like this, in a lodge that's remote. So go out there and look for the opportunities. Can you explain a little bit more what you do when you have a group of college students or students come?
We do a couple trips through, like one of the colleges we work with is Front Range Community College out of Colorado, and we do a program where they fly into Anchorage and then come to us. They're here with us for a week, and they do an adventure every day, and then they journal about it at the end, and then there's a paper that's required for them to turn in with their experience at the end of the week to get their credit. But they have lessons throughout the week on the salmon life cycle, on geography, on geology. We have quite a bit of geology here. The 1964 earthquake really affected this area. And so we talk a lot about the changes in our community and our environment that happened after that earthquake. We talk about Alaska history. And they go through the whole program and learn what it is to live in Alaska and experience Alaska. I may have to plug a cord in and move you here. I just got a notice on my computer that it's low battery, and I don't know why. So I don't know if you want to keep talking, and I'm gonna try to find a plug.
Yeah, so we can kind of finish up a little bit too, but I want to make sure that I talk about your photography a little bit, because that's what kind of prompted me to get in touch with you. And Jami's son is really into photography right now at West Valley High School too. So I know that my cousin had posted a picture that you got first place in the Alaska magazine. Can you just talk a little bit about your photography in Alaska?
Well, it's an amazing place to live. And I have always been interested in photography. My father was a naturalist. And so I grew up being drugged out into the wilderness on hikes and trails and laying under the trees and waiting while he took 25 photos of a wildflower, and so that was my childhood. And I never really thought I'd be interested in photography. But when I moved here and I looked at the amount of wildlife in this area, I started taking pictures, and it just kind of exploded from that point on. We get inches away from wildlife here. We get the shot that won the Alaska Magazine Wildlife contest was actually a once in a lifetime shot. We had an orca who was born in 1976. We actually know his name and when he was born, breach in front of our boat, and I was able to catch that on camera. And so that's a once in a lifetime shot. That's not something that happens every day to me. I've been here for many years, and that's the first time I've gotten a shot like that. But a normal shot would be close-ups of sea otters and seals and bald eagles and all sorts of things like that. So there's a wildlife entity here that's relatively easy to photograph, and it's a great place to start.
So your lodge is called the Orca Adventure Lodge. Did I get that right? Okay.
Yes.
And I'll post your picture along with this video the award-winning picture, because it is
great.
It's very cool. And so somebody like Jami's son, Jasper, is into photography. What would you tell a young person interested in photography if you could look back and this?
Well, my niece got a degree in wildlife biology, and she then decided she wanted to actually take pictures. And she is now a cinematographer with BBC and Nat Geo. And I would say if you're interested in photography, whether it's drone footage or it's still life photography or it's cinematography, is to get out, get shots of everything, get an active Instagram page, get your name out there, get yourself out there, and get familiar with everything. Take macro, take close-ups, take landscapes. Get out and get your photos, and then enter every contest that you possibly can that comes along. And that's where you learn. I take classes online. With COVID, that's one thing that's really opened up. A lot of places that weren't necessarily accessible for photography classes or classes and other things are now offering free classes online. And you just really need to, even if it's something that you think you're remotely interested in, get out and take some pictures and just start entering contests, and it'll either take off or it won't. But I find that my favorite times are spent photographing.
Oh, that's
Do you have any
awesome.
additional questions?
No, I like the fact that you say yes to things, and that we are in a society where we say no a lot of the times because we're too busy or whatever. But I think as kids, we just got to figure out the more ways. My son tends to be a little more introverted, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So photography is awesome for him because he can do it without having to be super social. But saying yes and not taking too many pictures ever, just all that practice, I think is important for kids to know that I'm sure you have many hours behind you to get that one shot you're ready for it. So,
and I take my camera everywhere. It's in my car, it's in a backpack, it's everywhere. And I am not the normal photographer. I am self-taught, so I am of the mentality of I will take 5,000 and get one good one from those 5,000. So I spend a lot of time weeding out. There are better ways to do that. What I do works for me and doesn't work for, I don't know if it would work for anybody else, but the bottom line is you can't get the shot if you don't have your camera. And it doesn't have to be, a Nikon D7000. Cell phones now are on our bodies all the time, and you can take amazing photographs with a cell phone. And you just have to be looking. I look at things very differently here now with a photographer's eye than I did when I first moved here. And I'm always looking for a shot, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm going to the post office, I'm looking on the way to the post office for a shot of a bald eagle or of a sea otter or something like that. So it's
The post office, she's looking for otters and eagles. When I'm driving the post office, I'm looking at the stop sign. Just kidding. I also just, I love having a photographer in my car with me because they're different. You're right. You guys look at things differently. And so he notices a lot more things than I would notice. So you're a good person to hike along outside with too, because that macro and the micro pictures that he takes, yeah, I would not necessarily notice. So.
And you got to experiment. I take a lot of pictures in color because that's what I see. But then, you know, you also have to think in black and white. And I am a firm believer of not manipulating photographs other than to change it to what people see. So my photographs are what I saw through my eye. And sometimes you do have to manipulate things to get the mountains to look the way they really looked when you looked at them, or the light just so. But, you know, there's a lot of different ways to do photography. People can really turn it into an art form and do a lot of manipulation with color. So it's not just, you know, take a picture and see what you shoot. There's a lot involved with it and a lot of different ways you can go. And you just have to get a camera and get off the couch.
So something else I want to mention is that before we start recording, Wendy was talking about that Warren Miller has gone up to her place and recorded up by there. So any of you that are ski snowboarders should recognize who Warren Miller is. And so do you have to, if you just have a minute left on your computer, if you want to just talk about some of that, how that kind of came about, and that you take them out, your husband flies them out?
Actually, we don't fly them out. Our property works with Points North Heli Points North Heli operations, and they lease our entire property. So they come in and they bring their guides, their own guides and their own chefs. And they work with North Star Aviation out of Juneau. And they have 4 helicopters that come up and park here on the property. And so you come in and you stay in the rooms and you eat in the cafe, and then you walk out the front door and get in a helicopter and you're taken up into the Chugach National Forest in the Chugach Mountain Range. And Warren Miller Films has come and worked with Points North for many years. And Points North Heliski has worked with us for over 20 years, and they're a very reputable organization. We recommend, you know, working with them. They're very safety oriented. We feel really comfortable working with them. And it's just another aspect of this area that you don't normally get to see, because without the heliski operation here, we would normally be closed that time of year just because of the inaccessibility to a lot of the areas that we work in the summer. So it's just another aspect of a way to look at Alaska and experience Alaska. And I think we have a link to them on our website for Orca Adventure Lodge. I think if you look under winter activities, there's a link to Points North Heli, and they have just some incredible footage.
I just was looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is your backyard. Holy cow.
That's our backyard. Yeah.
That's insane. You guys check it out.
So I'm going to stop the recording before we lose somebody, but I really want to thank Wendy I just contacted her this week. My cousin posted her picture and I contacted her and said, you know, can you get on a Zoom with Jami and I to talk to us about jobs up in Alaska, your photography, just give them a little idea of what's out there, that we didn't do a whole lot of this before COVID hit, but now we're reaching out to get some speakers from outside of the area too, so that you kind of have an idea of what's going on outside of Spokane. And Alaska obviously is a little ways from us. So, but I really appreciate it. Thank you, Wendy.
Oh, thank you guys. This is a lot of fun. I don't usually get to talk to folks outside of our area. So this was a neat way to communicate, and folks just need to take a look. I mean, I'm Orca Adventurous on Instagram. If you want to see some of my better shots, I have to say I put my best shots on Instagram. But we're on Facebook, and there's lots of pictures at on our Facebook page. In the wintertime, we focus a lot on the area's history on the Orca Adventure Lodge page. And then in the summer, we post what we do. So check us out. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody further if they have other questions. And it's just a pretty amazing place where we're at.
So I think we decided that Jami and I need to take a field trip up there to check it out.
Absolutely.
I think Jamie's going to talk to Mr. Lieberg and see if we can make that happen. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you guys.